But we're not joining the war. We are allowing the US to use our bases, but again for defensive, collective self-defense, to take out basically the ability of Iran to put missiles into the air that are going or may go to attack our Gulf allies.
We want an end to the Iranian nuclear and missile program, but we are not participating in this war. We have said this from day one. That remains the case for the federal government. However, this also means that as long as the war continues, we will not participate in ensuring free navigation in the Strait of Hormuz with military means.
On the military action, and the goals of this military action need to be, given by those who have started this war. Europe is not part of this war. We have not started this war, and the political objectives are unclear.
At the beginning of this conflict, I made it really clear that we wouldn't join the offensive strikes that the US and Israel were carrying out on Iran. We've got about 300,000 British nationals in the Gulf region, and it's important that we protect them and our Gulf allies. So we have got the RAF in particular flying aeroplanes across the region. They're actually intercepting strikes to stop them hitting people and buildings. So that's defensive action. But we're not joining the war. We are allowing the US to use our bases, but again for defensive, collective self-defense, to take out basically the ability of Iran to put missiles into the air that are going or may go to attack our Gulf allies and our people in the Gulf. So not going to war, simply taking necessary defensive action to protect British lives and British interests. Whether it's conflict in the region, whether it's the impact on oil and gas, or just the worry that most people have about how's this going to impact me in my home, the best way to reduce the impact is to de-escalate, to get to the end of hostilities and then get to a negotiated settlement. And we're speaking to all of our allies to try and make sure that that happens as quickly as possible. The Strait of Hormuz is a really important shipping lane. It's basically how the Gulf states access, the rest of the world, and a lot of oil and gas comes through the Strait. Iran is stopping shipping getting through the Straits. That is having an impact on oil and gas prices. We need to get the Straits back open as quickly as possible. We've been talking, particularly in recent days, to our allies about this, the US, European partners, to Gulf states. I'm not going to pretend it's easy to do this, but it is really important that we do it because whilst the Straits are not in full operation, the price of oil and gas goes up. And I know that then affects everybody at home. Although I do just want to say this to reassure people. In the United Kingdom, for households, we cut energy bills about £117 averagely for households. And we are going to cap that. We are capping that till the end of June. So I know people are worried. But just on household energy bills, be assured that in 3 weeks' time, they're actually going to be cut and then capped for 3 months. In the meantime, we will do everything we can to de-escalate the situation in the Gulf, because that is the best way to deal with the impact on the cost of living. We've got a number of military bases in the Middle East. They've been targeted by Iran. So in order to protect them, we had already pre-deployed anti-drone capability, radar capability. We already had our planes there, RAF pilots. We put more of those into the region. And from about an hour or two after the conflict started, they've been working 24/7 in the skies, taking out the incoming strikes from Iran, which is protecting our bases and our people in those bases. I'm really conscious that whatever's going on in the world, for most people, the issue they're most concerned about is the cost of living. Can I make ends meet? Can I pay my bills? Are my bills going to go up? And there's a real sense of worry about that. Now, I get that because when I was growing up, we didn't have enough money to pay our bills. And therefore, we literally had to sit around our kitchen table discussing how we would cope. So I know what that anxiety feels like. It's sort of knot in the stomach when you know you can't pay the bills. That's why this government has said that dealing with the cost of living is the number one priority. We have decided at the last budget to take money off energy bills. On average, for households, about £117. It'll vary a bit, but that's the average. Now, in 3 weeks' time, that decision goes into action, and therefore energy bills will come down, household energy bills, and then we will cap them for 3 months to the end of June. Whatever happens in the conflict, that will be the situation. I know that some people, particularly in rural communities and in Northern Ireland, use oil for their heating. And that's why today I've announced support for those that are using oil because their prices will have gone up. I'm also saying, by the way, too many stories of deliveries being cancelled and then prices going up when the new appointment is made. We've got to stop any sense of people being ripped off. But we are putting that support in. And we'll look at what else we can do. Fuel duty for those that are driving is frozen through till September. In an uncertain world, those are certainties. Those are some of the things we're doing in relation to the cost of living.
Last year, we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the German-Dutch Corps in Munster. Our defence ministers are working on the establishment of a second joint tank battalion. We have also jointly decided with France to explore new ways in nuclear deterrence. Here we have taken initial steps on a path that holds great potential in uncertain times for both our countries. I want to highlight 4 points from my perspective. Firstly, the region must not slide into an eternal war with unclear objectives. A further escalation of hostilities would bring great risks to our partners in the Middle East and across the entire Gulf region. The same applies in the event of a collapse of the Iranian state order, which affected the territorial integrity, statehood, and the Iranian economy. This war must therefore be brought to an end as quickly as possible and with a clear plan, with a strategy. I want to remind you that on the first day of the war, President Macron, Prime Minister Starmer and I stated, like the United States and Israel, we want an end to the Iranian nuclear and missile program, but we are not participating in this war. We have said this from day one. That remains the case. For the federal government. However, this also means that as long as the war continues, we will not participate in ensuring free navigation in the Strait of Hormuz with military means. To this day, we have no plan known as to how such an operation could even succeed. At all times it was clear that this war was not a matter for NATO. Secretary-General Mark Rutte has already emphasized this. I want to expressly align myself with this. The United States of America and Israel have not consulted prior to this war either. There has never been a joint decision regarding Iran on whether or not to engage. Therefore, the question of how Germany might become militarily involved does not arise. We will not do it. On the contrary, President Trump requested 2 weeks ago, in the spirit of burden sharing, to maintain the German presence on the eastern and northern flank of NATO. We are doing this. We do this out of full conviction and we are also reinforcing it. Russia will seize every opportunity to test NATO and weaken Ukraine. Therefore, in our view, it was a mistake for Washington to ease restrictive measures on the sale of Russian oil. We will not follow this path. We will continue to increase European sanctions and pressure on Russia. Moreover, energy prices cannot be sustainably controlled through such concessions to Russia. But for Ukraine, this is a harmful and wrong signal. Thirdly, we are very concerned about developments in Lebanon. We strongly condemn the fact that Hezbollah on the side of Iran has now entered the fight against Israel. Hezbollah must immediately cease these attacks and lay down their arms. We also support any effort that can initiate talks between Israel and Lebanon. However, we also call on Israel to refrain from attacking civilian targets and the UNIFIL mission of the United Nations. We are watching the Israeli ground offensive with considerable concern. Such an offensive would in any case further exacerbate the highly tense humanitarian situation and the dramatic exodus. Therefore, we urgently call upon our Israeli friends not to take this path. It would be a mistake. And once again, NATO is a defense alliance and not an intervention alliance. That is why I hope that we also approach this with the necessary respect in the alliance and treat each other accordingly. We share the goal. This Iranian regime must stop. It merely replaces a democratically legitimized government. But to achieve that through bombing, based on all the experiences we have had in previous years and decades, it is very unlikely to succeed.
Following the U.S. decision to ease sanctions on Russian oil, Europe will maintain sanctions and continue to move away from Russian fossil fuels. If we want this war to end, Moscow must have less money for the war, not more. Dialing up pressure on Russia's shadow fleet is one of the best tools we have. I commend France, Belgium and also Sweden for boarding and seizing falsely flagged tankers. It is time for the gloves to come off on Russia's shadow fleet. On EU side, the adoption of 20th sanctions package is long overdue. We discussed how to push this forward. The same goes for the 90 billion loan. Those who enable this war are also paying a price. Member states renewed sanctions on over 2,600 individuals, and today ministers also adopted new sanctions targeting those seeking to destabilize European Union. We also listed new entities in China and Iran responsible for the cyber attacks. Iran is now waging war on global economy. Ministers reaffirmed today that our focus is de-escalation and also to the freedom of navigation. I also discussed with UN Secretary General Guterres and many others over the past days how to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. Europe has no interest in an open-ended war. And today we imposed additional sanctions on those responsible for the violence. And this sends a message to Tehran that Iran's future cannot be built on repression. We must step up our support also to Iranian civil society. This is not Europe's war, but Europe's interests are directly at stake. Now, restarting the shipments of fertilizers, food and energy through the Strait of Hormuz is another urgent priority. Today we discussed options to better protect the shipping in the region. EU already has naval operations in place. We have Aspides that plays a key role in safeguarding the freedom of navigation. There was, in our discussions, a clear wish to strengthen this operation, but for the time being, there was no appetite in changing the mandate of the Operation Aspides. For now. While the Strait of Hormuz is at the center stage, the Red Sea also remains critical. The risk that Houthis get involved is real, so we must remain vigilant. But Israel's heavy-handed response has caused mass displacement, and ground invasion will further deteriorate the situation. The EU will provide €100 million in humanitarian aid to Lebanon. We also continue to support the Lebanese armed forces to disarm Hezbollah. The situation in Gaza and West Bank is also worsening rapidly. Both the humanitarian situation and the political horizon are moving to the wrong direction. First, the shipping in the region. So this is not Europe's war. And this situation in the region, we have the Operation Aspides, as I said, in the Red Sea. The discussion was that it should be strengthened because it doesn't have too many naval assets. It should have more. But the discussion on whether we are, also extending this mandate to cover the Strait of Hormuz to go north from the Muscat line, there was no appetite from the member states to do that. Yes, it is true that this new war in the Middle East is diverting the attention away from what is happening in Gaza and the West Bank. And ministers also raise this issue because we see that, this momentum is used to, again, hinder the humanitarian access, humanitarian aid, getting into Gaza. The second phase of the peace plan is totally stalled. So we have to keep this up, the attention there. And also the violent settlers, killing people without accountability, this is a major problem. And that's why there was also, again, this call that we have the sanctions on the violent settlers on the table. 26 countries want this, one is blocking. That is the sad reality that we have. On the military action, and the goals of this military action need to be, given by those who have started this war. Europe is not part of this war. We have not started this war, and the political objectives are unclear.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.